Hi everyone, appreciate y'all taking time to listen to me. It's a pleasure. Again, I'll reiterate this at the beginning of all my videos. I do not claim to be an expert. I'm not saying my process or how I go about planning my trips is the best. I merely am pointing out how I do it. I've experienced planning out trips. Most people ask me for advice on how to plan out my trips so they can help plan out theirs. So my goal is just to share my processes with you so that maybe I can make your process a little bit better, help improve how you go about planning out your trips, whatever it is, whatever knowledge I can share. My goal is to just help make everything simpler for other people. And again, if you look at my process and think, hey, I can help him out, or I can provide him a different way of doing things that might help his process, please share them with me. I'm always open to new ideas, new processes to use to implement in my planning process. I'm always open to improving. I think I can always improve and become better at something. So if you have a different way of doing it, please share that with me. Now for today's video, I will be covering step 3 in my travel planning process, which is planning out the activities that you'll do on each day of your trip. Now at this point, you should have already picked a destination and have a budget in place. This will make planning out the activities much easier. Obviously, you need to know where you're going to plan out the activities that you're going to do each day. And on top of that, you need to know what your budget is going to be so you're able to pick activities that fit within your budget. Now, there's a few tools that I use to go about planning my trip. I'm going to share that with you. And without further ado, I'm going to flip my screen over, share my computer screen, walk you through my processes, and show you which tools I use to help plan out the trip or plan out the activities I use during my trip. Process, picking out the activities. Now, as I mentioned, at this point, you'll have the destination figured out. It makes it a lot easier to know what activities you're going to do if you know where you're going, and then obviously having the budget in place so you know how much money you have to spend for each activity. Now, one thing I want to note or make a note of is when you're planning out your activities and applying the budget to picking out your activities. If you say you have $100 to spend on each day for an activity, you don't have to stick to that exact amount or confine yourself to that amount. Say you want to spend $50 on one day and then $150 on the next. That's fine. As long as the average amount that you spend each day lines up with how much you can spend on the total trip, that is completely fine. That's just what I wanted to make complete. Just a quick note of, just in case people didn't think of that beforehand or want help in that process. Okay, so jumping to the tools. The tools that I use to pick out my activities are, Pinterest, TripAdvisor, Viator, and AllTrails. Now, Pinterest, I've already mentioned to you before, is a great tool to use for getting ideas. Getting ideas off other bloggers, other travelers, what they did, seeing what piques your interest, what you might want to apply. It's pretty simple. It's just as simple as picking out the itinerary. Just type in, say, London. That's where you want to go. Itinerary, right? Pick it out. Wait for something to pop up. 2 days in London. You got a 2-day itinerary in London. Perfect 3 days in London. England first timers, itinerary ideas, etc., etc. This is gonna have a whole bunch of list ideas of things that you might want to do on your trip. You don't have to do everything that's listed on each blog, but what you can do is cherry pick things. Say you pick on this blog, right? Let's travel in, wedreamoftravel.com. Let's see what they have to say. Alrighty, so you have 2 days in London. Let's scroll through this. Planning for your London day itinerary. Probably got some good information in here. Before you go, always good information. Is a London pass worth it? I would say yes. Let's see what her opinion, or him or hers. I have no idea who. This is a girl or guy who wrote this article. Blah, 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 blah. All right, so here we go. We got Buckingham Palace. Tours of Buckingham Palace, 2.5 to 3.5 hours. Good information, good idea to know. Changing of the guard. St. James Park. Sounds like she probably planned this out all in the same area. Churchill War Rooms, Downing Street. Yeah, so it looks like she did it, pretty how I'd recommend it. Has everything kind of organized by day, all by in a certain area. So you just look through this. You can read through what she did, See if any of what she did, piques your interest, is something you want to do. She's got pictures, she's got explanation. You can do this for as many different blogs as you want. Ideally, I'll probably go through 3, 4, maybe even 5 just to see what they have to say. A lot of times, there's going to be a ton of overlaps, which is good. I mean, overlaps typically will be something that's just like, all right, if everyone's doing this, this might be something I want to do. Or you might be looking at the overlaps and be like, I don't want to do something that's super touristy. I want to do something off the beaten path. Then you know to kind of take that off your list. So this is a great way to get ideas, kind of brainstorm what you want to do, jot down things that catch your eye, jot down things you don't want to do, or jot down things you do want to do. Great place to do it is Pinterest. The next thing that I usually do is TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor, you can go to London. All right, so we go to London, top attractions, probably list the top 10 things: Tower of London, Tower Bridge, Churchill War Rooms. Now, I wouldn't say everything on the top 10 list is something you have to do. Again, this is your trip, so go about it however you want to. Sometimes some of these things might be a little overrated. Generally speaking, they're just, what has the most reviews, what's most visited. It's also based off opinion. If you're looking through this and you're like, the Natural History Museum, not really a Natural History Museum guy. Don't go to a Natural History Museum. Love cathedrals? Go to the cathedral. You like, market, you like food? Who doesn't like food, right? Absolutely recommend the Borough Market. It's amazing. A lot of great food there. But yeah, it's a good example of something you want to go if you want to go food. You want to go to a little park. Hyde Park's a great park. I'd say it's a little similar to Central Park, albeit I would say it's a little bit nicer. Definitely better views. And I think there's places where there's little beer gardens, and at least there was when I went. So I love Hyde Park. But you get the idea. You just kind of go through this, see what kind of piques your interest, see what you want to do. Highly recommend the Churchill War Rooms. That was very cool. But you kind of go through this. You want to see little landmarks. You want to avoid museums. Just cherry pick what you want to do and add it to your list. You're going to keep doing this. Come up with a list of things that you want to do, and then you're going to basically brainstorm on the activities based off location. I'll dive into that a little bit later, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what tools to use and how to use them. All right, another thing to do is Viator. Viator is, I don't even know if it's a parent or sister company of TripAdvisor. Typically, any tours that are see a TripAdvisor company. It's listed right there. All right. All right, so this is typically an extension of TripAdvisor. It's going to have all the tours that you might want to do, say, in London. And typically, instead of featured, I'll go travel rating. I just think it's a better idea of more accurate reading of what the top tours are. Tour for Muggles. That's interesting. I'd say it's a pretty cool one, but I've never been on that one, so I can't recommend it. Look at this. Alrighty, so like you can just kind of scroll through here. They give you a brief overview, what's included, what's not, departure times, return details, what to expect, good synopsis, and then what I really like to do is look at the reviews. How many reviews we got? We got 3,100, a 5-star average. Sounds like a great tour. So if this is something you'd be interested in you, maybe this is something that you do. This looks like a really cool tour. Alrighty. Definitely Harry Potter theme, so who doesn't love Harry Potter? Alrighty, so you can kind of scroll through this to some of the highest rated tours. High-speed Thames River. This is new. I don't think I've done this one. You got a historical pub walking tour. You got Stonehenge and Bath trip. I did this one. I recommend it. Stonehenge is pretty cool. I think Bath is probably even cooler, but I mean, Stonehenge is one of those things. It's a bucket list item. At least for me, it was. Stonehenge was a must, so I did a day trip to Stonehenge. I don't know if this was the exact tour that I did, but it definitely did take all day. And it takes you to see Stonehenge. You're there for a few hours. Then then from there you go to Bath, get lunch there, have a few beers, fish and chips, walk around Bath Abbey, walk around the Roman baths. Very cool, very historical. Highly recommend the Stonehenge Bath day trip. If you have a decent amount of time to spend in London. But you get the idea how to use this one. You just kind of scroll through here, see what tours you want to stick out to you that you might want to do. If you're low budget, I think you can kind of, I think there's somewhere on here where you can do by, price range. If you want to spend a short tour, you don't have the attention span to be in like a 3-hour tour, it's a good spot to do it. Another thing that I'd want to mention, there is, I forget what you go through, but there is a place to go in each city that offers free tours. I'll have to add this maybe somewhere in the comments section and look it up, but a lot of cities offer a place to go to where you can just do free tours. They do free walking tours of the city. Kind of escaping me right now, but I'll have to look at it later. But you can basically go somewhere. It's basically a tour guide or a company that does free tours of the city. You just, if the tour guide is good, you tip them properly. That's the only way they make money, but I'll have to add that later. Another thing that I want to mention on this, was it this one? Maybe not. All right, the other thing I want to add is AllTrails. AllTrails is another good app, another good site to use, but it's really mainly just used for hiking. So if you're in an area of the United States, or if you're in an area, I don't really know if London has any good hiking, but let's try it out. Say you're in London and you want to go hiking for a day. This is going to list out all the good hiking trails around London. There's got ratings. You can do a little, so if you want to do the Hampstead Heath Circular Walk, you got pictures of the hiking that people have taken. Well, that's kind of a cool hike, actually. Cool little picture of the skyline. Got some pictures. This actually looks like a really nice hike. Kind of wish I did this when I was there. So you got some reviews. I do little tags down here that say, dogs on leash, kid friendly, river, city. Gives you an idea of what's on the trail, the length of the trail, 4.5 miles. It's a loop. It's got a little bit of an elevation gain, 652. Not too high, but definitely a little bit of a hill. Got a description. Even got a little weather forecast on what it's going to be each day. UV index, daylight. Again, reviews, what people have said about it. So this is a good little app and site to use to pick out trails that you might want to do in an area. Say you wake up in London one day and you're like, you know what? I'm sick of this city. I'm sick of being around people. I just want to escape, go explore nature a little bit, kind of clear my head. Type in on AllTrails London, find out a little hiking trail that's, piques your interest. Go and escape the city for a little bit. Go hike, go explore. And then you come back. And then you go Yelp, and you're like, I want a beer now. Get some Yelp, or get some food, get some beer. Make a day out of it. So that's just a little high overview of different tools that I use when I'm planning out my trips. I use Pinterest to get ideas. I use the top, TripAdvisor to get some ideas. So I use Viator for tour ideas, and then AllTrails for hiking ideas. Now, one thing I want to make a note of when planning out my activities, and maybe I'll cover this in the greater detail later, since I think at this point the video is getting a little lengthy, but when you're picking out activities for each day, and you have a confined amount of time that you're spending in each city that you're traveling, you want to keep each activity that you're doing close to each other. Let me show an example of that. Let's say London, right? Let's go to London. Let's go to maps. All right. So say you have a set amount of time in London. What I would recommend is that you spend all day in, say, this area of London. St. Paul's Cathedral, Tower of London. I think Borough Market's right here. I think the Shard is somewhere over here. So you spend all day in this particular day of London, right? That way everything's pretty close to each other. Maybe you have to hop on the tube once. But most of it's probably gonna be walking distance. That way you're not burning a bunch of time traveling from Tower of London all the way to Buckingham Palace, back to St. Paul's Cathedral, back to the British Museum, back to Hyde Park. You wanna organize your trip so it's very in sync. So instead you're doing St. Paul's Cathedral, Tower of London, Tower Bridge, the Borough Market, the Shard, etc. It's all done kind of in the same general area. That way you maximize the time that you have in the city. You're not busy stressing out traveling from one side of the city to the other, hopping on one Uber to the next, etc., etc. Becomes kind of a pain. You relax. Another great benefit of this, you kind of knock out a lot of touristy stuff very quickly so that, hey, maybe I want to stop by the Borough Market and grab a beer, or maybe I want to stop and grab some food somewhere over here, the Smithfield Market. Not familiar with that one, but for example, I'm just saying maybe you want to Yelp something. You're like, all right, I want to go chill, have some drinks, maybe have some food, just relax and enjoy the rest of my day. You can do that because you knocked out a lot of the touristy stuff. Now you can relax. And then day 2, you spend all over here. You're going to the Buckingham Palace, Big Ben, Westminster Abbey, the Churchill War Rooms. You do that all in the second day. And then the third day, maybe you do a day trip to Bath and Stonehenge. But you kind of get the idea. What you want to do is organize your activities all in a similar location each day. That way you're just going from the next activity to the next. Frees up a lot of time, a lot less headaches, figuring out how to get one side of the city to the next. And then you can spend the second half of your day just kind of relaxing, having a few beers with the family, with friends, having some good food, maybe doing a little boat cruise down the River Thames. I'm not even sure if they do those, but that sounds pretty cool. But you kind of get the idea. So that just, kind of reiterate, step 3 is, of the training is for activities. You have the destination picked out, you get the budget figured out. It allows you to kind of figure out what activities you can do, what you can afford, what fits within your budget. You have the tools to use: Pinterest, TripAdvisor, Viator, AllTrails. It gives you an idea of what to do and how to get those ideas of what you want to do. And then again, my biggest advice that I can ever offer to someone is, if you're planning out a day and you want a bunch of activities to do in that day, keep them all in the similar region of the city. Also, I wouldn't recommend doing more than like 3 things in a day. Maybe a tour or two, a couple of things you want to see, but allow the rest of the day to kind of relax, actually soak in the city, get lost in the culture, the people, just exploring on your own without some set plan. So that's pretty much all I got for you on the activities slot or activity step for travel planning. Again, if you see something that I'm doing that can be improved, that can be better, please share it with me. If you think there's something that I do that dramatically helped you, please let me know. I love helping other people out. That's the whole reason that I'm doing all of this. And again, if you just want to shoot me a comment to say hi, you're more than welcome to. But I appreciate y'all listening, and I hope this was helpful.